Welcome in. Friday night means it's time for DFS Chalk Talk, brought to you by Triple Play Fantasy. We get it going right after this. Oh, yes, indeed. And as the shirt says tonight, it's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. I am your host, Jeff Mesha. I don't do this show alone. As always, I got my man Joseph. We're missing Mikey, but we'll get into everything DFS wise. Myself and Joseph. What's going down tonight, man?
So you literally got a custom shirt made for the last week of the season.
My parents got it for me. So come on now.
Big Al, Big Tear. Well, this is it, man. It's a little bit bittersweet. This is there's 3 football games left. This is the last multi-game contest we will be able to put together until next September. Last week was, the first week we had 6 games, 5 out of the 6 kind of stunk, from a going down to the wire drama perspective. Then last week was the exact opposite. Other than the Ravens, you had 3 games where I was pretty much standing in my living room, hanging on every play in the fourth quarter of most of those games. Your heart breaks for the Bills. Your heart breaks for Baker Mayfield in a way. Even Jordan Love, because those guys played their best football of their career and then just made one mistake towards the end of the game that cost them. But that was a phenomenal set of football games last week.
It was definitely, and we've got a good slate. On Sunday, you got the Kansas City at Baltimore. Baltimore's -4, and that one's at 3:00. Then 6 Eastern time. Then 6:30 Eastern time. You got Detroit at San Francisco. Last line I saw is San Francisco -7.5, which is a bit of a hefty line for a championship game. I have to think that. Detroit's playing some good ball. I think they match up pretty well with in most of the positions. So that's a tall order to fill if you're San Francisco to try to win by more than 7.5. What are your thoughts on that, out of curiosity?
Well, yeah, and I've seen 7, I've seen 7.5. You certainly feel better about 7, but even that, for the way this season is gone, it's not easy to take a 7-point favorite against a quality team. The 49ers didn't look phenomenal last week. I know it rained. Purdy seems to maybe have some problems with the rain. The other key is Debo's going to play. We know that. We don't know how unhealthy he is. And for as amazing as that team is, man, when that guy's not right, they are completely different. They look so out of sync in that game offensively most of the game last week. That being said, as great as Detroit's looked, they've not been good on the road. Goff in general in his career has been pretty abysmal on the road. Their running game's really important to them. Obviously, San Francisco on that defense. So it'll be an interesting one. I don't expect a blowout. I don't think either game's going to be a blowout.
I've heard a bunch going either way. If I've heard any blowout talk, I've heard a lot of Ravens are going to blow out the Chiefs. Historically, I can't see that happening. Something about Patrick Mahomes. I had the Bills in that game. Don't get me wrong. I was rooting for the Bills too, just like I'm sure a lot of the country was. But Mahomes just makes it interesting. I saw the viewership on that particular game, and that was the most viewed divisional round game. I think
it was the most streamed event in the history of the United States, no matter what it was.
Well, then there you go. So, that's the magic of Taylor Swift. And I'm not one to get into conspiracy theories because there's plenty running all over this place, right? But you got the Taylor Swift factor. You trying to tell me that the NFL does not want Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl, by the way? And then you also had that other conspiracy theory, which I think is garbage, but we're going to roll with it anyway for a second just to entertain ourselves. But you got the colors of the Super Bowl logo. Have you seen that one where it matched up last year was red and green, and then matched up the year before with gold and red, and now this year it's purple and red. So supposedly that means Baltimore and San Francisco getting there. But I don't think I think the NFL would love nothing more than the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl with Taylor Swift that they can pan to in that box plenty of times. And that might even take away from Usher's halftime show, got to be honest with you. But I would say San Francisco, Kansas City is kind of the money shot for the NFL. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but.
Yeah, I mean, if Kansas City were to win the Super Bowl this year, that's a dynasty. That is an official real-time dynasty. That's 3 Super Bowl titles for Mahomes and 4 Super Bowl appearances. The guy's never not played in the AFC Championship game. So to think that against a team that has lost many playoff games with this iteration of their team in Baltimore as the favorite. So I certainly don't expect Baltimore to blow them out. I know Baltimore looks great. They're probably the better team going into this, but I mean, Mahomes can win any game, anywhere, anytime. It might be Baltimore's year. Justin Tucker with a field goal at the end for a 3-point win, 24-21. That wouldn't shock me at all, but it wouldn't shock me either if the Chiefs win.
I got plenty of friends down here from the Baltimore area, so I'll be pulling for the Ravens just because, of course, I'm a Tom Brady homer. I don't want Mahomes to catch up to him. So I'm pulling for Ravens, and I want to go Lions. That's not necessarily ideal for the NFL, but I would love to see that happen. I think the Lions are a feel-good story, the rebuilding since 1957 Detroit Lions. So in any case,
yeah.
But what would do
possible? And first of all, I would love to see Detroit win it too, without a shadow of a doubt. That would be phenomenal. The atmosphere in Detroit those last 2 weeks was great. I think Detroit-Baltimore would be the worst matchup. That I could see Baltimore beating them up because I'm not sure Goff can handle that defense, and I don't think the Detroit defense can handle Lamar Jackson.
And for those, yeah.
What do you got?
I was going to say for those joining us, we last week it was just you and Mikey in my absence, and I appreciate you guys taking over. You guys put together since it is just 2 games and limited lineups. You kind of put your heads together and put together a lineup, which is what we're going to do tonight. Anybody who's watching us live, disregard the fantasy basketball waiver week. As always, if it's just myself and Joe without Mike here, there's always some sort of issue when it comes to running behind the scenes. So, Mike, we miss you already, kid, but we'll get it done. We'll get through the show. So, in any case.
So that being said, and yeah, that's what we did last week. We put together a couple of a Saturday and a Sunday lineup, and we did one on FanDuel, one on DraftKings, I believe, and we did hit the Sunday lineup hit. The Saturday lineup did not. So we went 1 for 2 last week, Mikey and I. Let's see how we do. So what we're looking at now is we are looking at the full Sunday, both game slate on FanDuel. We have our salary cap here of $60,000 to spend, which is about $6,600 per player. We will start at quarterback, and we haven't really talked too much about this in advance, but we do both know who we want to play at quarterback in this situation, and that is Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
Talking purely fantasy, the guy ran for 100 yards last week. He's going to run when he needs to run again this week. He's got Mark Andrews back. Zay Flowers has gotten hot at the right time. So I certainly like Lamar Jackson to go 20 plus this week from a fantasy perspective. 8,800, we're paying 1,100 more than any other quarterback. Understand that. Little easier to do that on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Hard not to play Lamar. What do you think?
Well, and that's the thing. So Lamar, the last 2 games he's played, has gone for 36 FanDuel points each game. Okay, so you got that factor. If you can't fit him in salary wise, let's just say hypothetically you have other guys that you really want to fit into that lineup. I'm saying you got to go Goff. You can't go Mahomes. You just got to Mahomes wise. Last 2 weeks he scored 18 and 18 on FanDuel, and then you have Purdy, who's kind of that consistent right around 20 guy. I would say swallow the salary a little bit, and then for Lamar. But if you're not, go with Goff because he could get you 25, just like Purdy could get you 25, and seemingly Mahomes will get you 18 or 20. So that's kind of where I stand. I think you got to go Lamar, but if you're not, Goff is the guy.
It's interesting. It's crazy that Mahomes isn't the guy fantasy-wise this week, and I would agree that he's not, even when he's played well. I don't believe, and I'll check this now, I don't think he hit 20 points last week. Yeah, 18 the last 2 weeks. So the way KC's winning, it's not with Mahomes throwing it all over the field at Baltimore. I would agree. My issue with Goff, if not Lamar, is when you look at Goff's numbers here, his road games that he hasn't been on the road since December 30th. But when I'm looking at Dallas 12, at Minnesota 14, at Chicago 6, at New Orleans 16, he hasn't gone for over 20 on the road since November 20th against the Chargers. That would be my concern. I believe what you said on the other side of that, 500 more, you go with Purdy. And the thing you got to like about Purdy, and Purdy hasn't been great the last few weeks either. There's no doubt about it. They're facing the best rushing defense in the league. Will McCaffrey be able to run all over Detroit? I don't know. If Debo's healthy, I like Purdy a lot. If Debo's not healthy, we know he's going to play. The problem is we won't know if he's healthy till he's playing. So, you're really going to have to roll the dice there. I would go Purdy as my number 2. I understand what you're saying at Goff. You saved the 500. Goff, you got to figure is going to have to score the most points out of any of these teams to win.
I mean, yeah, halfway decent point there. So I think we can both agree Lamar's the guy, period, and just kind of figure out otherwise what we're getting there. Running back wise, to me, again, another no-brainer. You got Christian McCaffrey is the highest salary on there at 11,000, and he has been for a long time, and there's a reason for that because the guy is just a stud fantasy wise. I think you have to figure out a way to get this guy into your lineup. I don't know if you disagree or you have somebody else in mind, but to me, McCaffrey's the easiest choice out of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny. Like I've got 2 lineups on each site right now. And because Lamar and McCaffrey are the 2 most expensive plays, regardless of site, although you know what, that's not right. I'm in Ra's 9K. I've divided Lamar and McCaffrey just to be a little more salary friendly, but we're trying to hit the gusto here. So I agree in wanting both of these guys in this 1A lineup that we're creating. You just can't not play McCaffrey. Okay, Detroit's got the number 1 rush defense. Maybe he won't run 15 rushes for 100 yards, but that doesn't mean he ain't going to catch 8 balls for 60 yards and a touchdown too. So I agree on McCaffrey. I will say this, though. The number 2 running back spot, especially now in a situation where we already got to think about starting to save some money, there's a lot of options as the number 2. I like Gibbs a lot. He's my second favorite running back of the week on the slate. Whether or not we can afford him here, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts as at number 2 running back?
I mean, I'll agree with you on Gibbs being the second one that I like, but I just salary wise, when I tried to make that work, I just couldn't make it work. We'll see, I guess, if we can slide him in and then kind of see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, and the reason why, real quick, let's talk about why. You got Montgomery getting his 10, 12 rushes a game, 50, 60 yards and a touchdown. Gibbs happens to be doing the same thing and still, 4 catches 2 weeks in a row, but 3 rushing touchdowns 3 weeks in a row. So that's why we like Gibbs there. Let's put him in and see what happens. And the first thing we're going to do now, and this is what Mikey and I did last week, let's go down to defense and tight end, save a little salary, and see what our average is after that.
Sure.
I'm going to let you pick the defense. I'll say this. You could start the Chiefs defense. I don't think that's horrible, but I do believe really you got to go with San Francisco or Baltimore. You can't go the Detroit defense, in my opinion. That being said, I will let you have the choice there. Would you go San Fran or Baltimore?
I mean, salary-wise, there's not too much difference. I think you're right as far as Detroit being a different team on the road. I'll throw some stats at you. Not that this is meaningful whatsoever, but the last 5 games that Jared Goff has played against the San Francisco 49ers, he's 0-5. He's averaged 227 yards passing with 17 touchdowns and 7 picks. Now, he's got a bit of a different team. He has played the San Francisco 49ers once as a Detroit Lion. Obviously, that was a loss since he's 0 for his last 5. The last time he beat San Francisco was Week 17 of the 2018 season when he had, I believe, maybe even Todd Gurley was on the team. I have no idea. In any case, so having said that, I'm saying all of these, with the exception of Detroit, are elite defenses. So you got to look at who can put up or can hold the opponent or maybe even put some points on the board as a defense. I say San Francisco and try to make it work somewhere else, because if you try to go Ravens, Mahomes just has a way, man, of just squeaking some points out or making it happen. And you can't. The Chiefs' defense is about as elite as it gets, but you can't do that against Lamar's going to put us some points. Period. So I'm saying San Francisco. What say you?
Yeah, you could sell me on any of the top 2. I mean, given if salary was not an issue, I would also go San Francisco, and Baltimore would be my number 2. At some point, we're going to have to go down on salary here, but let's start with the 49ers. and then we'll make some tweaks afterwards. Now this is insane. Like the way these teams lined up as far as the tight ends available, I've never seen a tight end line up like this for a 2-game slate. You got 5 tight ends that you could easily make a case for playing, because even with Andrews back, Likely is still relevant based on how he's been playing for them. Kelsey's stepped it up in the playoffs after having a slow regular season. Kittle's kind of come out of nowhere this year and has been, I don't know, he's been a little better than I expected this year. Laporta, even injured. I mean, the guy's getting 11 targets last week, 9 catches. Andrews at 5,700 because he hasn't played in 3 months. Yeah, in my lineups, in a lot of cases, I've ended up flexing a tight end and going with 2. I'm not going to commit to that here. And I do think we need to go one of the cheaper guys right now, just because we're at a 5,700 average and we haven't picked a wide receiver yet. So, I think right now, for the interest of our lineup, we got to go Andrews or Likely, just to save that cash. I'll let you choose which one you want to go.
I'm saying Andrews just because we've seen him and Lamar. That's a special combination there. They got some great chemistry. Hopefully they have that back quickly in the championship game. But I got to go with Andrews on that one. And those other tight ends are all great. Certainly Kelsey, man, had a monster week last week, and he woke up for the first time in a long time. But between Laporta and Kittle, if Debo's there and McCaffrey and Ayuk, how much is Kittle going to really get? You just never know. He could go off. He could not. And then Laporta, yeah, he's had some great games, which has not necessarily translated into huge fantasy points. So I say Andrews is worth dropping down a little bit and trying to hopefully get that 6 for 60 and a touchdown kind of thing.
I'm on board there. I think Andrews, and it seems like, it's the AFC Championship. So certainly they're not going to rest him. They're not going to play it cautious with him. It feels like he's practiced enough where he's going to be able to make a mark on that game. So I'm not too worried about rust with him or whatnot. I think we're at 5,700 for average salary left. We haven't picked a wideout or a flex. I think right off the bat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that 300 for us and move that San Francisco down to Baltimore. Not because we like Baltimore more than San Fran. You laid it out perfect, but I do believe we're going to have to save some salary. So we got 4 power position players left here. I think what makes the most sense, let's start with a cheap wideout, because we need some cheap guys here to see what we can really do at the end. So I'm going to scroll down to kind of the wideouts that are under our 57 average.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one to start. Scroll down to 5,300. You got Jawan Jennings. The reason I say this is the Detroit pass defense is 32nd in the league. At 5,300, if Jawan Jennings gets 2 catches for 40 yards and perhaps gets in the end zone, boom, that's worth the 5,300. You agree, disagree, have somebody else in mind at that range?
So it's funny. There are a lot of viable guys in the lower range. I mean, I think you can. Scantlin last week went 2 for 62. So even that's viable. So there's a lot of guys there. I am totally fine with Jennings. I like Jennings, especially if Samuel's not 100%. I think the bottom line is we're going to have to pick another one of these guys too. So I'll give you Jennings to start. I'm going to pick the next one. And this is tough because I actually Josh Reynolds, because Raymond's been out. So Reynolds has been pretty viable the last 2 weeks. I'm not going to go Reynolds because I want to save more money than spending 56 on him. So I'm sitting here and I'm not looking at Nelson. I'm looking at Odell Beckham a little bit, but he really hasn't done anything these last few weeks after kind of having a little bit of flurry during the season. Jameson Williams is interesting because he gets the snaps and he's got big play potential. He hasn't done a ton, but to your point, 5,000 on FanDuel, I'll use your Jennings argument, 2 for 50, and it's worth the money. And I'll even look at Bateman, because Bateman's had a little bit of play here these last couple of weeks, 3 for 39, 4 for 54, and you're going all the way down to 4,900. I think it stops at Justin Watson. Watson, he didn't catch one last week. He had 2 for 20 against Miami. He's gotten in the end zone a few times this year. Mahomes kind of likes him in the red zone. I think that's probably as low as we could go. All that being said, I'm going to go with Jameson Williams at 5,000. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because you know, I think Detroit's going to have to score to beat San Francisco. I think there's a very good chance that at some point in the game, Detroit's playing from behind. And I think San Francisco's savvy enough to not let Amon-Ra go for 10 and 150 and 2 touchdowns. So I think Williams is going to at least get the targets. What he does with them is always a flip of the coin with him. But I think I'm going to kind of go for the home run there with Williams at 5,000, unless you passionately disagree.
No, I like that one, especially because, if you're looking at guys in that range, like a Bateman or Odell Beckham or MVS, the thing is, Kansas City has elite corners. Okay, their defense is fantastic. So I don't want to roll the dice on a guy to maybe make a couple catches against that defense. And Baltimore's almost as elite at corner, not as much, but almost. So I'm good with sticking with Williams up against San Francisco. Even they do have a good defense, but it's more of a better run defense than it is a pass defense. So in any case, that's me agreeing with you.
All right. So there we go. So now this is where it gets sticky for us. We've saved some money. We got 13,000 left. We need a flex. We need a wideout. That's 6,500, which isn't bad at all. We got some really good options. The problem is this. With the iteration of this lineup, we cannot play Amon-Ra, and we can't even fit in Debo. So, wait a minute. 13. Well, I guess technically you could play Debo and have 5,000 left, which would put us at, Bateman, Valdez-Scantling, or Justin Watson, which I don't think we love the idea with. So if we keep the lineup as is, we're going to have to go with like a Rice or another cheap wideout and then flex either a Kelsey or one of the better running backs on the board. Or we go down from Gibbs to allow us to get to Debo. What do you think?
So I guess that's such an X factor, because don't get me wrong, I would love to have Debo in the lineup, but to have McCaffrey and then also Debo and not know his health 100%. I mean, he's playing, but is it a scenario where they're going to keep him limited? Maybe he'll get a couple rushes here and there. He'll get some targets here and there, but maybe it's more Ayuk getting those targets. And I just hesitate a little bit having both McCaffrey and Debo there. That's all.
My thing is I think I'd rather Amon-Ra at 9K than Debo at 8K. I'm not sure we can get to Amon-Ra. That being said, 6,500 left. We can get some decent guys. So let me ask you this. Who over 65? So if you look at Kelsey and Rice, which one would you rather have, Kelsey or Rice?
Of course, you like Kelsey, but I do like Rashee Rice, man. I tell you, I think Baltimore is going to be so keyed in on Kelsey, especially because of what he just did against the Bills. Rashee Rice is going to get his opportunity, and we don't have anybody from Kansas City in there right now, so it's got to be one of the two of them.
I agree for sure. So let's try it. Let's try Rice. And now we're in a situation where we got 5,900 for flex, and let's see where that leaves us. So, wait a minute. Yeah, we already got Mark Andrews in there. So it leaves us with Gus Edwards. Ugh. See, this is where I don't love this. I don't love this situation. But the problem is, I feel like I'm starting to feel like we can't go Gibbs.
Well, let me ask you this, Joe, and just because I'm not seeing it as well, even with my glasses on, what's the difference between Andrews and Isaiah Likely as far as tight end salary wise?
It's 300. Andrews is 300 more. So, and it's an interesting. I see where you're going with that, because if you do put Likely in, and then not at flex though, Jimmy. Come on. If you put Likely in at tight end, and now you go back to flex, it gets us to 6,200, and we can play David Montgomery. But now you're in a situation where you're playing Montgomery and Diggs, and you don't want to, or Montgomery and Gibbs, and you don't want to do that either. So it still feels like we can't play Gibbs.
Yeah. So,
So do you take,
gosh,
so let's go back.
I almost don't hate playing both of them. That's the
At
tough
San
part.
Fran, though,
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely don't mind one. And, you save 1,000, you go Montgomery. That's the way to do it. You got to remember, we're paying 11 grand for McCaffrey,
So, and I had Montgomery in my initial lineup too because of McCaffrey and Lamar. So if we pop Montgomery into running back, where does that leave us at flex?
So let's go back. Let's save the 1,000 and go back to that scenario of having the wide out and the flex left. Now we're at 71.50 each. That's our average. So now we can look and everything's on the table. I mean, even Amon-Ra is on the table because you could go Amon-Ra and then still have 5,300 left, which I'm not necessarily saying that's what we should do, but we could do that. So, how many Detroit guys do we want to have would be another thing because we already have 2. Or if you want to stick to our plan and go Rice, keep on putting them in. Let's stick to the original plan because you do make a good point. Baltimore is a very smart defense. They're not going to let Travis Kelce beat them. It doesn't mean Kelce doesn't have a good game. Baltimore is not going to let him beat them. So I almost feel like Rice could end up playing a larger role. So now you put Rice in, you got 7,200, and you can go Kelce too. Wow. I
say we go Kelce. I say we go Kelce.
So real quick though, you could go Kittle and go back, or Laporta and go back to the 49er defense.
Ooh, that's a juicy one. I would say, man.
I mean,
I like Kittle against that Detroit defense. I guess more so than Laporta against the San Francisco defense. So I would say Kittle, and then we can throw in the San Fran defense, which both of us feel better about playing against Detroit than Baltimore playing against Kansas City.
Yes, and the Chiefs don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't score 30 points a game anymore, but it's not like Mahomes is going to throw 3 picks, where Goff could throw 3 picks.
Correct, and has shown that in the past, yes.
Oh, wait a minute. So we're still going likely, but then we're going to flex Kittle, and we're going to see where this leaves us. So, okay. So we do have 300 left. We got Lamar with McCaffrey, Montgomery, Jennings, Williams, and Rice. Likely George Kittle in the San Francisco defense. So the funny part,
if we got 300, hold on a second, if we got 300 left, then we can go back to Andrews.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Or the other thing I was going to, you're absolutely right. You go back to Andrews. Yep. So let's see. I was going to suggest something different, but yours is the appropriate move. So now we're looking at Lamar with McCaffrey and Montgomery. You got Rice to go with Williams and Jennings. Williams and Jennings being our cheap plays. And then you got Andrews, Kittle, and the 49er defense, and you've used every penny. I'll
tell you, before this started, you mentioned that a lot of your lineups you were getting the tight end at flex as well. It just so happens that has worked out this way too. But I don't dislike that. What say you? As I've said before in this podcast already.
It's funny because like the idea of having Rice, you go into this thinking, okay, I'm going to have Rice or Kelce in most of my lineups. The idea of being able to have both of them is a little juicy, but it's kind of not because Pacheco's their best shot to score a touchdown. Kelce number 2. So the chances of both Kelce and Rice getting in the end zone at Baltimore is probably a little more slim than maybe previously. So I think we ended up okay. The only other thing I was going to suggest was we had 300 to spare, and I was looking at Jawan Jennings, and I have no problem with Jennings, but if you have 300 to spare, if you go back down to Baltimore, that's another 300. So now you have 600 to spare, and then if you went from Jennings, bear with me, last one. If you went from Jennings to Bateman, Valdez, Scantlin, or Watson, you could then go back to Gibbs against Montgomery.
I guess.
But then you're also at likely instead of Andrews.
Right, and I just say Jennings just has against that Detroit defense. has more of an outside shot than those other guys do against the defenses that they're playing, I guess, would be my answer to that.
100%. Jennings becomes more relevant immediately.
Sure.
I think we should stick with what we got.
So
Montgomery, 10 for 40 and a touchdown, and you'll take the 10 points for Montgomery.
There we have it, folks. Put that one in the books, and we shall see what happens. But I'll tell you, it's going to be a great slate of games. Like I said, Kansas City, Baltimore to lead us off, and then you got Detroit at San Francisco. It's going to be fun, and when we'll be back here in a couple of weeks to see who's in Super Bowl 58. Any predictions, Joe, before we get out of here?
I think San Francisco is going to make it. Man, I don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I really don't. Baltimore, it's just they're very complete, and now they got Andrews back. I want to say KC, San Francisco, but if I had to bet on it, I think I'd have to bet Baltimore, San Fran.
I'm going the Taylor Swift NFL conspiracy theory. I say Kansas City versus San Francisco, and I think San Francisco takes it. I'm sticking with the conspiracy theory. They want Taylor Swift. They're going to overshadow Usher's halftime performance, and we'll see what happens at Super Bowl 58. But in any case, it's been fun. Mike, we missed you, brother. We will catch you next time. And until next time, as always, we got you covered.